Hello, and welcome to the ADE Spotlight Podcast. Today, I'm going to be speaking with Jim Haggerty and Renee Eady about Unum, a new client and document management system for the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities, or DBH. Jim is the president here at ADE Incorporated. He's in the office here with me today. And Renee is calling in from Georgia, and she is the trainer over at the Ready Train. My name is Bridget. I'm a member of the team here at ADE, and I'm going to be directing the conversation today. Unum went live on February 6th, but has been a project here for a lot longer than that. So, Jim, can you tell me how this project came to be?
Well, we've been talking to DBHD about a paperless document management system, a client management system, for a number of years now. The conversations really got serious last summer. We were at a conference on Jekyll Island in Georgia, and we had some conversations with Dr. Dunbar. Shortly after that, we met with them in their offices in Atlanta and just sort of talked about a framework of what that kind of program might do, what it might look like, what it might take to create that, how it might benefit DBHDD. And so it was late last summer when we really got a go-ahead from them to start putting this application together. It then became a matter of putting together a little bit of a plan in terms of how to do that. So we worked closely with the team here, Bridget, which you, of course, you've been a part of it all along, and the group here, and working very closely with Renee, who has a lot of experience as a clinical evaluator and a lot of ideas about how this kind of program could function. And so we began in earnest back really late summer, early fall of 2016 to put this together. We had something reasonably complete by the end of 2016, and we started to invite some of the clinical evaluators in Georgia to get in and use it and run a pilot test. We got some feedback from those users. We got some feedback from the Department of Behavioral Health itself, and made some changes and some alterations to it. We ran a pilot program through the entire month of January 2017, and then went live, Bridget, as you said, on February 6th. As we sit here today, we've had quite a few number of clinical evaluators now register to use the program, and we're getting some real good feedback. And just today, as a matter of fact, we added some assessment instruments in the application as well. So it's fair to say it's a client management system, a document management system, but it also provides clinical evaluators now the ability to run a number of assessments on their clients as well. So it really is a powerful program that's user-friendly and virtually paperless. Renee, would you say that's an accurate summation of the conversations thus far?
Oh, it's a fabulous summation. I mean, we started way before our sit-down meeting with DBHDD in July. However, since that meeting, it has really been a push to meet with evaluators, formulate a plan, create code, test, and now we're way into training clinical evaluators. So I think that's a great summation.
Bridget, as you know, I've known Renee for many, many years now. We go back quite a long way, and I would say the conversations between Renee and I about a project like this have been happening, I'm going to guess, for 3 or more years. And it's not a stretch to say we could not have done this program. We would not be where we are now if it weren't for Renee's assistance on this. I don't think this would be happening today without her, and she's been an extremely valuable part of the team. And it's really been very helpful for me and for our team here to have somebody there on the ground in Georgia working with the clinical evaluators, communicating with the Department of Behavioral Health, and a person that we can really trust and benefit from having those relationships. So I want to make sure that Renee knows how important she is to the team here at ADE.
Absolutely. Well, it certainly is a powerful program. I've seen it from the ground up, essentially. Renee, what were some of the concerns with the existing process, either on your end or for DBH?
Just to kind of tag in on some of the things that Jim had just said, and thanks, Jim, for all those wonderful comments. I have had a chance to work with a variety of the stakeholders in this process. And for one thing, I actually contracted with DBH for about 6 months, setting up training events, audits, doing some regulation. And one of my tasks was to create a new short form for clinical evaluators. And as I worked on that project, I was really thinking about how could this be automated and populated so that the evaluator doesn't have to fill out so many different forms. And one of the biggest problems I found for evaluators is that keeping up with all the paperwork, for one thing, and how timely it is, time-costing it is to collect all this information, share information. And then hearing some of the complaints from clients about obtaining the copies that they needed for probation. So all of that was part of the thought process and some of the underlying issues with why we need Unum. Mm-hmm. And then the other major piece was about following confidentiality and making sure things are secure. Most providers here are very familiar with HIPAA. I believe they have a good understanding and they abide by those regulations. But most providers are not as familiar with high-tech. And high-tech is really that companion piece and requirement for electronic records. High-tech covers all these electronic records from our laptops to our cell phones, and any document or communication that transpires by an electronic means. If our computers or cell phones are not encrypted, if we communicate by email or fax or text message, and it's not encrypted end-to-end, well, we're not in compliance. If we send a text message to the client and it's not through an encrypted program, then we're not keeping a record of that in the client file, then we're not in compliance. Mm-hmm. If we use our cell phones to take a picture of the client or the driver's license or other documents, and it's not automatically loaded into the client file, or it's left on our phone, then we're out of compliance. And so to make sure that all of us are able to meet the HIPAA standards and high-tech and complete things in a timely manner, well, then Unum became the answer to that.
Jim, you have anything to add to that?
Well, as I understand it, I think one of the benefits to Unum, one of the shortcomings that may have existed in the process prior to Unum, is that the evaluation process and the reporting process wasn't necessarily consistent from evaluator to evaluator. And what we've done with Unum in part is to provide a uniform method for evaluating clients and a uniform method for reporting the necessary information, not only back to the client, but also to DBH. So I think that's an improvement that we see in Unum over what the existing process was.
Okay. Renee, would you like to go more in depth about what the Unum application is? We have a brief understanding of what it is, but what more can you tell us about it?
Well, the Unum application is a web-based document sharing application, and it makes it easier for evaluators, clients, and associates, whether they're legal or treatment folks, to collaborate and then move the client through the process without a lot of lag time. It has these 3 unique portals or access points. And of course, the evaluator portal is the primary account, and the client and associate can upload or receive documents, approved documents, designed by or designated by the clinical evaluator. It's secure. It allows them to meet high-tech requirements, and it only allows information shared based on the clinical evaluator's oversight and the client's approval through the releases of information signed by the client. It's flexible, It doesn't require some large monthly fee that has to be charged to access it. It's just based on a per client fee. So it's only based on the number of the clients they have. Now, of course, evaluators are going to want to put all of their court assessments in, whether they're DBHCD clients or they're doing some other assessment type, whether that's anger management, shoplifting, gambling, or so on, because it's just going to be so easy to access their records, and it provides that security that they need.
And DBH isn't the only type of clients that Unum can hold. It can hold clients that aren't part of the DBH program.
That's right. So if an evaluator is doing a variety of different assessments, whether it is for domestic violence, anger, shoplifting, gambling, pre-trial or substance abuse evaluation that is still not actually tied into the DBHDD system, they can use the Unum system to do their reports, keep up with their clients, and communicate with both the client as well as the associates. Most of the associates are going to be the same whether the client or offender is within the DBHDD system or not.
And it also works, there's a way to get a needs report in there. I know that ADE is the supplier of the needs. I know a lot of people down in Georgia use that assessment. Can that be integrated into Unum at all?
Well, the way it has been done in the past is you would have to tell your client to get the needs assessment from the driving school, and then we're kind of dependent upon the driving school to get that information to us. And now, with really a click or two of the mouse, the driving school is able to actually send that document, share that document with the clinical evaluator, again, based on the client's release of information, and put it directly in that client's file, giving the provider almost immediate access to the needs assessment. And the evaluators that I've talked to have all said, wow, when they see that actually occur, they're very excited about now being able to get the needs assessment in a much more efficient and timely manner.
Jim, do you have anything to add about the capabilities that the Unum application has for the clinical evaluators?
Well, I think Renee did a good job of summing it up. I think it's worth mentioning that the planned phase 2 of this will be to expand Unum for use by treatment providers.
Right.
And that's something we're looking forward to, hopefully summer or fall 2017, to have the pieces in place to allow treatment providers. And that's kind of an exciting idea, that this client record that's created at the beginning of the process would in some way follow the client through the evaluation process and then through treatment as well. I think the advantages of that are pretty self-evident. And so that's something that we're going to look forward to having some very serious conversations about over the next several months.
Right. So how did the development process proceed, Jim, from coming up with the idea to getting everything else that goes into Unum?
Well, it's as you know, Bridget, you've been involved in 90+% of these conversations, so you've seen how this thing sort of is birthed. Renee and I had an excellent conversation at DBH down in Atlanta, and it really started the minute we left their offices. As we walked out of those offices, and I think both of us were starting to formulate in our heads, okay, what is this program going to look like? What do we need it to do? I came back here to our offices in Michigan and laid out sort of a vision or a sketch of what the program might look like. And it really is as simple as a paper and pencil process, drawing out a flow chart. What are the current processes? How do they work? Where do they fall short? How might we improve on those processes? Really listening to Renee and relying on Renee to tell us this is how it works now. This is something I think we'd like to be able to do. And really is about making a list of things that we had to have, and then things that we might like to have eventually. And then we took it to our team here, our programmers, and we really asked them to do about a year's worth of work in about 4 months. And they took that task on, and it kind of went from there. And so we had a series of meetings. It seemed like we had weekly meetings where we would look at where the program is now, show it to Renee. Renee would tell us whether we were on the right track, or what else we needed to add. A good example would be the ROI process. Here in our offices, we had some idea of what an ROI was and what that ROI process was. But having to learn about the various options for ROIs, their various uses, how that fits in, and then taking that and saying, how do we put this programmatically into Unum? It was really a learning experience along those lines, and the ROI is just one example of that. But there also was a challenge of narrowing the scope. One of the things that we find, and you know this, Bridget, is as we find out more and more what this program can do, the scope tends to widen. And I think part of my challenge was really to try to keep the scope narrow.
Right.
And say, at least phase one of this program, we want this to be a streamlined program for clinical evaluators only. And when we started looking at all of these other cool things that we could do, my task was to say, well, let's put those aside for a moment. Let's maybe table that. Let's look at that when we start talking about conversations with phase two, and just trying to keep us on track. And I think so through all those types of conversations, we ended up with this application. And then we had to put it out in the field. We had to put it out in the field to have clinical evaluators get into it and see if what we put together worked. This idea that there were separate portals for clinical evaluators and for clients and for associates. That idea made sense sitting here in our office. Did that idea make sense to the clinical evaluators?
Right.
Did the idea of a one-click transfer of the needs assessment resonate with the DUI schools? Did the switch to electronic signatures on ROIs, was that an idea that was going to be welcomed? Our ideas about providing reporting back to the Department of Behavioral Health, how are they going to respond to some of our proposals for the reporting? All of those kinds of things that make sense when we discuss them here in our office, or when we discussed them with Renee. The real test came when we put it out in the field, and through the pilot program we got some feedback. But I think for the most part, the program that we came up with that started as an idea moved to a paper and pencil flow chart that eventually moved into what Unum is now, and like I said, continues to evolve. I mentioned at the top of this conversation that we added some assessment instruments to the application today. Now, these were at the request of clinical evaluators who have been in there. They're familiar with the needs assessment. They like the needs assessment. They wanted the opportunity to run assessments that they are familiar with. Now, these are the ones we added today are in the public domain. But we were able to recreate them electronically, so now they can request that their client take these evaluations, and they can do it right through the Unum application. It's a fantastic idea. We put a gambling assessment in there today, one that we created. It's proprietary to ADE, and we put that in there, and we're hoping that the clinical evaluators will take a look at that and use that and tell us how that works for their clients. So it's a continuing conversation, and that's how this will work. When we get into phase two now, I think we all, Bridget, you being part of our team here, I think we have our ideas what we want to do in phase two. I think Renee and maybe some other clinical evaluators have some idea about what we want to include in phase two. I know the Department of Behavioral Health has some ideas of what they'd like to see. And that process will repeat itself. We'll have those conversations. We'll sketch it out on paper, and then we'll start to do it programmatically. So
Right.
that's sort of the development process in a nutshell. And we've got some fabulous programmers who bring their own perspective to it.
Yes.
That's one thing for us, coming from a more clinical background, to say I'd really like it to do this. And then you have to ask the question, well, what is possible programmatically?
Right.
And it may be, in a lot of instances, we have some ideas that may not be practical programmatically. We may have to look at a different approach because that makes more sense with the technology that's available. But we've got some guys here on our team that work with us that are pretty skilled at looking at all the options and telling us how to best accomplish what it is we're trying to accomplish. So that was the process with what we'll call phase 1 of Unum, and that's going to be the same process when we start to tackle phase 2, which will focus on the treatment providers.
Right. And as you said, Jim, Renee's been here every step of the way, but she also is a clinical evaluator, so you have a different perspective of this program. Renee, what do you see this application does for the clinical evaluators?
Well, really, I want to say it's a lifesaver, but it really is an extreme time saver and money saver for the clinical evaluators. When I have talked to clinical evaluators, they were really complaining about the amount of time it takes them to collect documents. I mean, evaluators are running in multiple different locations. They're doing the work, they're meeting with clients, and that's what they love to do. I mean, they love to be with clients. But the paperwork part, now that's the tedious part. That's the stuff that gets put on the back burner, puts to the side, and then trying to locate that paperwork afterwards is difficult. So, evaluators want to work with people, not paperwork. And Unum is going to take much of that burden off of them by streamlining that part of the process. Once the information is inputted into the application one time, it auto-populates into other forms that they're required to fill out, such as the clinical evaluation or the release of information or the treatment transfer. So these are automated parts of the process. They don't have to do it again. When they have been getting staff to handle much of their message taking and faxing and emailing, evaluators can now quickly receive messages from their client, respond, collect, share information without that extra time of explaining to a staff member what to do. They're able to actually do it themselves. When an evaluator completes the evaluation and they notify the client it's ready to be shared with probation, well, the client can agree and sign that ROI digitally, and the transfer automatically takes place to their probation officer or to the treatment program that they choose. There's no need to print anything or transfer. That share takes place immediately upon the client's approval. And this process can happen based on whomever's time frame or schedule. So a client may meet with the evaluator during the day, but they may sign the release of information in the middle of the night if that suits them. So it helps everyone stay on track, but not have to meet physically back with each other that second or third time.
And how does this process benefit DBHDD?
Well, when it comes to DBHDD, I mean, one of the things they would like to see a more uniform process. And so DBHDD would automatically know whether an evaluation is from one of their evaluators because it's going to have a more similar look and feel to it. It would help the provider meet DBHDD's requirements or stay in compliance with both them, HIPAA, and high tech, protecting their credentials. It helps DBHDD look at accountability. So there is a record of every interaction that the provider has inside Unum, which will protect the provider as well as provide that paper trail if needed down the road. The system also keeps track of all of these evaluations and sorts the documents for the provider. It helps them keep track of all these evaluations, not just the ones they remember. So it's going to make the reporting back to DBHDD as far as the number of clients that they've seen, who they have pending, who they've completed, and what the level of recommendation would be. It's going to make that much more efficient for both the client, both the provider, as well as getting accurate information into the DBHDD system.
Okay, Jim, is there anything you'd like to add about the benefits of Unum for either clinical evaluators or DBH?
Well, I think Renee summed it up pretty well, but I want to talk just a little bit about the cost side of it.
Okay.
Renee mentioned early on in this conversation about how time-consuming it is for the clinical evaluators to gather all of this information from their clients. We were doing a training down in Carrollton, Georgia, and Renee asked the group there about the number of hours it took to do various tasks associated with the clinical evaluation. And it became very clear as this group started talking just how many hours were spent gathering paperwork from clients or preparing reports either for the clients or for DBHDD. And I think it was very clear based on her explanation just how much time and money using Unum would save the clinical evaluators. The cost for the clinical evaluators is based on a per record basis. The cost is $13 per unique client record. Now, as part of the rollout here, we're discounting that to $11 until October 1st of 2017. But regardless, it's a single fee per client record. And I think when folks do the math, similar to what Renee did when we were doing the training event, I think they can see that that $13 is money well spent. Once a client record is created, all activities can take place within that client record without any additional fees. There are no fees for the Unum software itself. It's simply a per record fee. And we're hoping that there will be some adjustment to the fees that can be charged to the client for the clinical evaluation process. So in reality, the clinical evaluators may find that they can adopt Unum for their clients, and it really is a cost-neutral situation. So I think there's a lot of benefit, and the pricing structure set up on a per-record basis, I think clinical evaluators will find advantageous.
Yeah, I agree. We may have touched on this already, Jim, but can you give us a brief explanation of when the project is completed, when it started?
Well, as I said, we've been having discussions about this for quite a while, but then we got through the development, we got through the pilot project, and then on February 6th, we invited all of the evaluators to start using the program. Mm-hmm. As a matter of process, though, when a clinical evaluator starts using Unum, they're initially in a trial phase. The trial phase allows them to take the training that they've already received, but to have a hands-on experience where they can get in, they can create quote-unquote dummy records in this trial process to get themselves familiar with the program and how the document sharing works. When they are ready, they can become an active user of the system, and they can start to then have live records within the Unum application. All of that is happening now. We are enrolling more and more clinical evaluators every day. And so this phase one is up and running now. Mm-hmm. And as I mentioned a couple times now, we'll start discussions about phase two as we go forward.
Right. And how can people get started with this? Renee, you might be able to tell us about the different training events and how to get started in Unum.
Yeah, so we've had about 10 live events already that we've already completed, and we have 5 new ones that are coming up in the next 2.5 weeks. This is going to continue at a fast pace of trainings being offered for people to be able to participate in. Afterwards, the training for us will be for new providers as they come on board, whether that's for probation officers if they would like some training. I also offer WebEx trainings, and they can jump into training at any time. This morning, I was doing a WebEx training, and one of the providers called me and says, "Hey, how do I do so-and-so?" And I said, "How about jumping into the WebEx with us?" And so he was able to share his screen, and we were able to talk him through what he needed to do. It was a wonderful learning experience for him and for the new providers to be able to see how the system works. If a person wants to go to training, they can go to my website, thereadytrain.com. There is a link that is available for all the different trainings that are currently being offered, and they can register for whether it's a live event, online event, or if they would like a personal training, I'll be glad to set that up with them as well.
Okay, excellent. Is there anything else either of you would like to say about Unum before we wrap this up?
Well, I know, Bridget, you have created Unum resources page. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yep, I created the Unum resources page. It has 3 columns on it, one for the clinical evaluators, one for clients, and one for associates. From this page, we can link them to any resources we think would help them throughout the Unum process. For clients, they can find links to different driving schools and different treatment providers. For associates and for clinical evaluators, there are options to become a billing contact if somebody else is to be paying the bills, or there's even a place where you can click Join Unum to request to become a clinical evaluator in the program, along with a couple other infographics and instructional information about processes that you might not have understood during the first training that you took part of.
How does somebody find that page?
The link to this page is just Unum, Unum spelled UNUM, -resources.com. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Renee?
I think overall, Jim has done a wonderful job in helping us kind of boil down all those must-haves and would-like-haves. And we really are way into phase 1 with a combination of both of those items and rolling out the like-to-have as they're being developed. The overall idea of Unum was to make this as secure as possible and user-friendly, not just for the provider, but for clients and those that are both tech-savvy, as well as those that are not as computer literate. And the program is so simple to use, I think all stakeholders will be able to use Unum with ease.
I don't think I could say it any better than that.
All right. Well, thank you, too, for talking to me about the Unum process and the program that we've created. Again, if anybody would like more information about Unum, you can find some resources as well as a brochure on the Unum resources page, the link gaunum-resources.com. Or if you're interested in joining the program, you can sign up for a training over at thereadytrain.com.
Well, thank you, Bridget. I appreciate being here today.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bridget. Thank you, Renee.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the ADE Spotlight podcast. For more podcasts like this one, you can visit our YouTube channel. Or for updates on all that ADE is doing now and in the future, you can like us on Facebook or Twitter. The links are in the description of this video. Thank you.